All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having an incredible week. We got another film session for you guys today. It's rare for us to have some real stuff to dig into in the later half of a playoff series when most teams have pretty much figured out how to play against each other. But we got a new player, a new superstar that joined the Sixers Celtics series, as well as a big adjustment from Nick Nurse. And we talked a little bit about this stuff last night, but on rewatch, I found some other details that I want to get into, some specific actions that Boston can run that I think can help them generate some better looks, as well as some actions that the Sixers ran that I think the Celtics need to be prepared for. So we're going to dive into the concepts from last night, the deeper drop coverage, the staying home off ball, some of the stuff that Embiid was doing to cause problems for the Celtics defense. We're just going to dive into it. I've got about 25 clips for you guys today that kind of break down how Philly flipped the script on this series and forced a game 6. So without any further ado, let's get into the film. Before we get started, real quick, you guys know the drill. Please subscribe to the channel. We're on our road to 150,000 subscribers, so it'd mean a lot to me if you guys would just take a second to scroll down, hit that subscribe button. Also, like this video, sign up for post notifications. That helps us a lot. All right, let's dig into it. Number one, this is that example that I was talking to you guys about involving the drop with the peel switch. Essentially, accounting for Vucevic on the pop. So one of the things that happened in the first half is Vucevic burned the Sixers on the pop 3 different times. He had a driving dunk, and then he hit 2 pick and pop threes. The main dynamic that we're talking about here that's fundamentally different than what we saw in game 4 is when Jaylen Brown would come off of a ball screen like this, in game 4, Embiid was way out here. He was like way out here. And that was immediately putting the Sixers in rotation. Like as Vucevic would roll, we would see a tag usually from this weak side. And then this guy would drop. It'd be like an easy swing pass. They'd be in rotation right away. It just would put an emphasis on their foot speed. It also gave Vucevic some favorable matchups under the basket in terms of offensive rebounding, as well as like post-up situations. It just kind of compromised their defense immediately. Whereas in this game, these 3 dudes were staying home for the most part. And what that allowed is it allowed these 2 guys to guard the action 2-on-2. And that put the emphasis on Boston's ability to score 2-on-2 against the drop, which significantly cut into their catch and shoot opportunities. We talked about this last night, but the Celtics averaged 33 catch and shoot jump shot attempts per game in the first 4 games of the series. They had just 19 last night. And as you'll see, some of them weren't even good looks. So you'll see the huge difference in Boston's shot profile as a result of this coverage. But so again, here's the kind of peel switch idea. So as Jaylen Brown is driving in, again, you're getting like light digs, but nothing crazy in terms of help. And as Embiid kind of contains Jaylen Brown, you'll see Kelly Oubre go, oh, Joel's got this. I'm going to hang back on Vooch. I'm not pursuing. That way, if Jaylen Brown throws this pass, it's an easy, quick closeout. But that puts the emphasis on Joel Embiid to catch Jaylen Brown on a drive and to get a stop one-on-one. Here he forces Jaylen Brown into a really tough fadeaway and forces the miss. Here's the exact same kind of thing with Tatum with Tatum instead of Jaylen Brown in a ball screen. Again, watch Embiid. He's going to drop back. See on the ball screen. They're going to reset. Another one, same thing. Look at how far back Joel Embiid is. Again, in game 4, he was meeting Tatum out here. And the defense was getting into rotation right away. As you can see, he gets downhill. Watch Paul George. Same thing. Paul George gets hit on the screen. I'm not going to pursue. I'm going to hang back. And I'm going to stay on Vooch rather than leave him open. Tyrese gets back cut, but he stays into the play. Now watch. Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum picks up his dribble underneath the basket. Embiid has him under control. He's not going over Embiid at the rim. Vooch is guarded. Derek White is guarded. Hauser is guarded. Jordan Walsh is guarded. And so because Embiid contained this effectively one-on-one, or these 2 guys contain this action 2-on-2, there's no kick out read. So when Tatum goes to try, he throws it right to Tyrese Maxey, and we get a turnover. I talked a little bit last night about how one of the things that Philly was doing that was buying a lot of extra space in their drop coverage looks was the stack action and how that was actually tying up Vucevic in back screens. Here's an example of that. They set up Quentin Grimes with the ball screen, but watch as Tyrese Maxey tries to set this screen on Vooch. You can literally see Vooch's head. He's turned and he's watching Maxey. He's expecting that screen. So watch how Vooch gets under. He's like, ah, shit, I don't want to get back screened here where I can't protect the rim. So I'm going to drop below Maxey. And what that does is it just creates essentially a 2-on-1 over here where Embiid's a screener and Grimes is your ball handler. So Grimes knows the only guy he has to worry about is Pritchard. There's nobody in the area code as he comes around the other side of the screen, and he's comfortable rising up and knocking down that three. But again, like if you watch Vooch full speed, watch how like he's just continually worried about that back screen. Here's an example of Jason Tatum scoring on the ball screen coverage 2-on-2. Again, notice that a lot of this, like there's not complications. They're just running pick and roll. And this is something I was complaining about last night on the show. Like I'd love to see just a little bit more of an attempt to get Embiid in the blender with 3-man action, whether it's double drag, Chicago stack, stuff like that. Just try to get him involved in more action rather than just running static pick and roll, which can be easier to guard. But this is an example where it worked. So ball screen, and Oubre peel switches off onto Vucevic again. These guys are all not helping. They're kind of in a position where if they need to close out, they can easily close out to the perimeter. This turns into a 1-on-1 with Tatum on Embiid. He dislodges Embiid and then goes over his left shoulder with a hook. And this is something I'm going to talk about throughout the rest of this video. Like in the same way that Philly was dominating the game offensively by just beating the coverage in terms of, oh, you're guarding Embiid 1-on-1 in the post. Embiid's going to score every damn time because you can't guard him. Or, oh, you're going to run a super deep drop coverage. Well, we're going to hit these pull-up threes. That's the coverage beater. In that case, the deep drop coverage is a defending ball screen 2-on-2 look. The 1-on-1 look against Embiid is, again, 1-on-1, so there's no easy kick-out reads. You have to beat the coverage. Embiid's beating the 1-on-1 coverage by scoring 1-on-1. The guards are beating the drop coverage by hitting pull-up threes, right? In this case, in order for Boston to have success against this type of look, they're going to have to beat the coverage by scoring 2-on-2 or scoring 1-on-1, or if you get a third man involved, scoring 3-on-3, which I think is their best chance to have sustained success. But the Stars just have to do a better job of beating the coverage. Tatum did beat it on that possession. Here's another example of that stack. Watch Vooch. See how he wants to get under? Now Grimes misses it, but it's the same sort of thing. Grimes knows if I get clear of Pritchard, I've got to look. There's not going to be a contest in the front. He has all that real estate in front of him to rise up. He misses this one, though. The deeper drop was really baiting Jason Tatum into some mediocre pull-up threes. Once again, watch the lack of like actual creativity here. Paul George defended Jaylen Brown extremely well in the second half. There's no movement. There's no action. We just pitch it over to Tatum. Now we're going to run a ball screen. Embiid's in the deep drop. Tatum just immediately rises and takes that shot, and he misses it against the deep drop. Now, Tatum had made one earlier against Drummond in the second half, but then he missed this. He missed this one and one prior. So he's taken 3 of them against this coverage. He's made one. That's something that I think the Sixers are willing to live with. He's Tatum in this playoff run, 4 for 21 on pull-up threes in pick and roll. It's 19%. That's a shot that Philly's got to be willing to live with. He's 7 for 12 when he drives and tries to shoot a 2-pointer, and that's not counting fouls. So Tatum needs to look to be a little bit more aggressive, looking to drive in ball screens. More great defense from Paul George on Jaylen Brown. Watch him beat Paul George over the top of the screen and take a charge. Gets the ball, beats him over the top of the screen, draws a charge. Great defense from Paul George in the second half on Jaylen Brown. Now, one of the interesting dynamics that I thought was fascinating was when Keita was out there was no need for them to peel switch. So, right, the Vucevic pops were why they were peel switching. So one of the things you'll see is Embiid is basically just ignoring Keita this entire possession and hawking the rim. Because he knows that Keita's only ability to really score is at the rim, and he trusts his ability to handle that. So what that allows is it allows Grimes the entire possession to just continue to chase. And you'll see on the driving closeout too, Edgecombe does the same thing off of Shireman. But let's watch it full speed first. Today's show is brought to you by presenting sponsor Hard Rock Bet, the official sportsbook partner of the Orlando Magic. And speaking of the Magic, they're back in the NBA playoffs, where the lights are brighter, the pressure is higher, and every possession can change a series. And on Hard Rock Bet, every night is your shot to score a major bucket. With winner go home energy on the hardwood, I love building same game parlays. You might like the hot hand to drop 30, the big man to control the glass with a double-double, and the point guard to dish out 5 assists. However you draw it up, Hard Rock Bet gives you tons of ways to stack your picks into a same game parlay built for the playoffs. If you're ever late to tip off, don't worry. Hard Rock Bet lets you live bet all game long from the first bucket to the final buzzer. Try your first bet on Hard Rock Bet today, and you could score $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but an extra $150 in bonus bets. But the welcome offer is just the tip. Hard Rock Bet has new promos daily, so open up the app right now to see what promo you've got today. And sure, Hard Rock Bet is Florida's only legal sportsbook, but you don't have to be in Florida to join the party. Hard Rock Bet is also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, Colorado, and Michigan, with more states on the way. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today, and let's get the party started. So again, as Pritchard drives, watch the other three guys. Again, there's like slight digs, but nothing out of position to where there's an easy, obvious kick out. Embiid's helping at the rim. Watch Grimes just chase through. BJ loses sight of man and ball for just a second, so Pritchard actually throws a nice little kick out to Shireman, and Shireman beats him. Right? But it doesn't matter because Maxey doesn't have to help. Grimes doesn't have to help. Paul George doesn't have to help. Embiid's there at the rim. Embiid shuts down the rim. VJ just has all the time in the world to chase back into the play. And now look, Shireman's like, oh shit, I want to get rid of the basketball. But look, Grimes is guarding Pritchard. George is guarding Brown. Maxey's guarding Derek White. Nobody's open. Shireman almost travels and then throws the ball out of bounds. Here's an example of stack that I just thought was poorly executed. And you want to give Quentin Grimes some credit here. He gets up into the ball on Pritchard, which slows down this ball screen attack. So Pritchard's still in triple threat and is not even attacking, and Derek White's already setting the back screen. This buys all sorts of time for Joel Embiid to be prepped for it. See how he's kind of turned, just like we saw with Vucevic. He's turning and prepping for the back screen. Now, at this point, Pritchard's driving downhill. Maxey does a nice job of tying up Derek White. Now there's no chance to set the screen. So now Derek White flares out. Maxey switches onto the ball, and Quentin Grimes switches out to Derek White. Advantage is gone. So there's got to be some better timing here. Like Pritchard's got to get into his attack a little bit earlier, and Derek White needs to time the back screen in a way. Because like if Pritchard's going downhill, Embiid's not going to have the time to stop and really look. See, the reason why Embiid can do this right here is because Grimes is tying Pritchard up here. So if Pritchard gets into his attack a second earlier, Embiid is more up here facing Pritchard, which allows Derek White to set the back screen, which is what will free Kata up on the lob, and or if Tyrese Maxey helps, Pritchard can get all the way to the basket like we saw in some of the earlier games of the series. So just, again, I like the idea of running stack, but it's just got to be more, it's got to be executed properly. More great defense from Paul George on Jaylen Brown. This is what I was talking about earlier. Like, if Embiid's just going to be able to cook one-on-one and nobody on the Celtics can, that's going to be a problem. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have to start winning some of these matchups. We talked about it in the Hawks series too, with like Jalen Brunson and CJ McCollum. Sometimes you got to be able to score on the best defenders, and George just did a great job on Paul George, on Jaylen Brown, and Jaylen Brown just didn't win enough of those battles. Another great individual defense possession with Paul George on Jaylen Brown. Look at him get back in front and contain the ball. But I actually want to get back and talk about another element on this play. So we talked about Embiid. Again, look at Embiid. Embiid's completely ignoring Kata this whole possession, right? So one of the other areas that I thought, I'm going to give you guys a second, see if you can guess here. When you see Kata rolling here, and you see Pritchard relocating off to the right wing, what opportunity do you see for Kata to be of use, even though Joel Embiid is ignoring him? See if you can see it. What if Kata just sets a screen here on Quentin Grimes? Like we saw on the VJ Edgecombe back cut that he gave up to Baylor Shireman earlier, even though these guys are supposed to be staying home off the ball, it is an extremely natural tendency for off-ball defenders to be watching the ball, to ball watch, right? And so you have an opportunity to set screens on these guys and catch them off guard. Quentin Grimes is just over helping off of Pritchard here in the lane. Kata has an opportunity to set a screen. And if Jaylen Brown's aware of this, he pitches it back to Pritchard. He gets a wide open catch and shoot three, something the Celtics did not get much of in that game. This particular action is one that I would like to see them run again. It's not stack, but it has some similarities in that you have a shooter relocating off to this wing as they're running the ball screen. So I would run this action and just plan for that pin down from Kata. So essentially just have Jaylen Brown run a ball screen off of that right wing, drive middle as Pritchard's relocating. Just it's basically the inverse of stack. Instead of Pritchard screening for Kata, use Kata as a screener for Quentin Grimes. Have Jaylen Brown prepared to pitch it back. You're going to get a wide open three for Pritchard here on the right wing. Here's another great drop coverage look. Again, drop coverage puts a heavy emphasis on this defender's ability to get over the top of screens. And again, there's no peel switch because it's not Vucevic. Chases over the top. He's gonna end up. Grimes is gonna get switched onto White here. Here comes the ball screen. Chases over the top. Again, Embiid's in his drop coverage. Watch Grimes stay attached to Derek White. Get a great contest. Great crackdown rebound there from Tyrese Maxey. Here's another example of Tatum just not putting enough pressure on the ball screen. So again, he was settling for threes, and then look at this one. So he drives off the screen going back towards the side. And then instead of like attacking Embiid, he just whips a cross-court pass to Sam Hauser, who's being guarded. Okay. So he whips it to Hauser, who then whips it to Jaylen Brown, who's being guarded by Paul George. And again, this registers as a catch and shoot three. That's in the books as one of those 19 catch and shoot threes. You tell me if this looks like the catch and shoot threes that were open that they were getting in game 4. It's just not the same. That's not a good shot. And there's 9 seconds on the shot clock. So all this is dummy action where you're not actually applying any pressure. Whereas if Tatum actually tries to get downhill here, maybe you get some better ball watching from these guys for an easy kick out, or hell, you're going to have to score on this action 2-on-2 at some point, or you need to get that third offensive player involved to make it more complicated. This is not a good offensive possession for Boston. Here's that play I was talking about where Tyrese Maxey beats Kata at the level. So Kata comes up in the screen and Maxey just goes right around him for a layup. And again, a couple things. Really nice screen from Embiid. Watch the screen that Embiid lays on Derek White that catches him up. Okay, knocks him literally to the ground. But also, Kata's dropping, but he knows he's got to care for Embiid. And so he's just a little bit not prepared for the drive. And then when Maxey hits the Jets, he's like, oh shit, I'm beat. Gets all the way to the basket for a layup. A little bit of that gravity from Embiid on the roll. This was a look that I actually really liked because again, kind of like we talked about on that one where I asked Kata to screen down for Peyton Pritchard. When Jaylen Brown is ISOing, even though the scheme calls for these guys to stay home, there's kind of a natural tendency for these players to react. So watch as this gets kicked out. Jaylen Brown's going to run an ISO, and they're going to run a flare off of that ISO. Okay. So I like this look. Jaylen Brown's ISOing. As he's ISOing, watch Embiid. Embiid naturally, for just a second, loads up on the Jaylen Brown ISO. Then Kata sets the flare screen. As a result, there's a window here for Hauser to get a good look at a catch and shoot three. I like that idea of using the Brown ISOs as a fulcrum for running off-ball action for shooters. Here's an example of why you have to beat your matchup one-on-one. Paul George did a great job on Jaylen Brown all night long, but he gets beat cleanly here. What happens when he gets beat cleanly? Embiid has to hard help, which creates an easy lob pass read. Kata gets an and one. That's why it's so important for Tatum and Brown just simply to win their matchup in these one-on-ones and these two-on-twos to actually compromise the defense. Here's another bad Jason Tatum three against the drop. And what's really unfortunate about this one is Tatum does a good job of shedding Quentin Grimes on like the fake. He fakes like he's going to go for the handoff, right? Sheds Grimes because Grimes is trying to get over the screen. But now watch. Tatum catches. Grimes is recovering, but look at VJ. VJ's running over. Just drive. Just attack. VJ is going to come over and help, see? And then you've got this 2-on-1 on the weak side where you can get an open catch and shoot look. Instead, it's another one of those. This one registers as off the catch because he doesn't take a dribble, but it's more or less like another pull-up three against a ball screen, which again, he's 4 for 21 on, and this one literally almost puts a hole in the backboard. So like, I just want to see Tatum look to attack a little bit more on some of these ball screens. This is one of those like kind of haphazard double teams of Joel Embiid that I thought kind of contributed to an open look where they just need to be a little bit more prepared for how they want to run these doubles. But look, Joel Embiid's posting up. Tatum just kind of comes from the wing. There's no reaction from either of these two guys. So Joel Embiid just has the easiest kick out pass of his life to Grimes, knockdown three. Like that needs to be. Missoula needs to be spending every minute of the next couple of days just figuring out what the double team scheme is going to look like for Embiid in game 6, which I have no doubt that that's what he's going to do. I expect Missoula to come out aggressively doubling Embiid right away in game 6, and I expect it to be very sophisticated and to have a lot of like different kinds of doubles involved to try to confuse Embiid. Here's really good Quentin Grimes defense on Jaylen Brown. Doesn't concede the catch, forces it all the way into the backcourt, beats Jaylen Brown to spots multiple times, forces him into a really tough pull-up midi. Look at how everyone's staying home off the ball. This is so not Nick Nurse basketball, but they're just like, let's see what you got. And it, again, took the Celtics out of their easy catch and shoot looks. Here's another thing that I thought was kind of interesting from the film for the Celtics to explore in game 6. I'll just play it through first, see if you guys can catch what I'm seeing. The whole problem was Embiid at the rim, right? When they went to Keita on the ball as a fulcrum, Embiid pressed. If Embiid presses, there's nobody at the rim. If there's nobody at the rim, you can get advantages for the Jays without rim protection. Keita actually throws a nice pass here. Tatum just rushes. It takes his eye. You could see Tatum take his eye off the ball. Watch. Takes his eye off right as it's coming in, which causes him to bobble it. And then he smokes the layup. But like, by the way, I thought Tatum was rushing most of this game, like rushing the pull-up three, just rushing that last one we saw before reading what the defense was doing. In this case, like literally even just right here, just seal and catch instead of going right up with it. You've got size. All half, they haven't been sending help. Just take your time and finish over the much smaller player. But the key here is whether it's Vooch or it's Keita, get him on the ball to pull Embiid away and then have your off-ball action to try to get the Jays inside position and easy opportunities around the rim where Embiid is far away. I think that's another thing that they could look to try to get them better looks. Philly got Boston with this play twice, and so it's just one that I think they need to be prepared for in game 6. All they're doing here is running a post-up for Embiid where they expect a front. So essentially, you can actually see Embiid try to force right here. He's trying to get behind Jaylen Brown. And then even when he sets up his angle, he's preparing to spin. He wants to get behind. Jaylen Brown ends up fronting. Look at these guys up top. Quentin Grimes and Tyrese Maxey are literally standing at half court. This is deliberate. They're doing this to pull these two guys out. This empty side is making it so that you can't help from behind the front. And then they're occupying that strong side corner, right? So essentially, it creates this passing angle for Paul George where he just has to launch it anywhere in this vicinity. And if Keita does bail, he's got an easy read to VJ Edgecombe. but he throws it right over the top. Easy finish. He actually draws a foul on this one. But they ran it once earlier in the game, too. I'm going to show you guys right now. This was in the third quarter against Vucevic. Exact same thing. Watch how VJ and Tyrese both just kind of stand around half court. They clear the full side. Vooch tries the front. Vooch is front in the post. It's the easiest little passing angle over the top to Embiid for the dunk. So that's just something they need to be prepared for. There's a couple different ways you can look at this. If they're going to be that absurd with the decoy spacing, you could just have one of these guys drop down and essentially just try to identify the play early. So someone's got to see as they're bringing the ball up the floor, like, okay, they're getting ready to stand around half court here. That means they're probably going to go to the post front. See how it takes a full 2 seconds for Paul George to get the pass off. One of these guys needs to drop down and essentially make it so that if they're going to stand like this out at half court, you have time to rotate back because both of these guys are out of scoring position, right? And even if one of them, even if, let's say, Jordan Walsh drops to try to help here and they swing it over to the side to VJ and VJ makes an extra pass to Maxey. If Maxey racks the closeout, he's driving into Vucevic, right? And you just have an opportunity to rotate and at least try to get a stop here, as opposed to leaving Embiid one-on-one against a post front with no backside help is just going to be a bucket every single time. So it's just a play that Boston needs to be prepared for in Game 6. Here's more great individual defense from Paul George on Jaylen Brown. Really, really good defense there. Just the last two clips here, both just more individual defense. This time it's Quentin Grimes on Peyton Pritchard. Gets over the top, gets back on his side, plays him into a tougher mid-range fadeaway. Again, that's a makeable shot. So that's another example of like, hey, you got to win your matchup a little bit. And then here's Tatum on Maxey. Watch him rush this again. Like, dude, just slow down. You have so much size here. Just rushes into it and smokes the layup. So again, I think it's pretty clear what you guys can see. The emphasis in the defensive scheme is on the Jays' ability to score one-on-one and for all their ball screen handlers to score in ball screens 2-on-2. You saw some opportunities there, whether it's just running a more well-executed version of stack, using Keita as an off-ball screener when he's rolling rather than just rolling into Embiid, who's protecting the rim. The stuff with Keita and Vucevic on the ball while you run off-ball action to try to pull Embiid away from the rim. They just got to find some ways to get some easier shots. This was not an example of just hot shooting winning a game for Philly. This was a defensive scheme that played Boston's offense into an extended slump that they're going to have to solve if they're going to go into Philly and get a win, or if they don't, if they're going to go back home for Game 7 and get a win. So the challenge is in front of them. I expect a better defensive effort from Philly or from Boston in Game 6. I expect double teams from Joe Mazzulla in Game 6 against Joel Embiid. I expect a more deliberate offensive process to get some better looks against the Embiid sitting at the back at the rim coverage. It's going to be a very, very interesting chess match as we head into Game 6. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. Quick programming note, we are going live after Lakers-Rockets tonight, but it's going to be about a half hour after the final buzzer, just a heads up. So that'll be kind of around like 10 p.m. Pacific time. So just keep an eye on our YouTube channel. We're not going to be going right after the final buzzer. There's going to be a little break there, but I will see you guys shortly after the final buzzer tonight.